أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم، وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين، سيما بقية الله في الأرضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، الحجة ابن الحسن المهدي فداه أرواح العالمين. سيدي يا حجة ابن الحسن، هذا يوم الجمعة، وهو يومك المتوقع فيه ظهورك والفرج للمؤمنين على يديك. اللهم فأكحل ناظرنا بنظرة إليه، نظرة نستكمل بها الكرامة عندك يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم. قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: ولقد كرمنا بني آدم وحملناهم في البر والبحر ورزقناهم من الطيبات وفضلناهم على كثير ممن خلقنا تفضيلا. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. Essentially, the difference between coal and diamond is simply in the way the carbon atoms are arranged in these two very different, very distinct, and very unique products. They're both composed of diamond, but because these diamond atoms are arranged slightly different in each of these two products, you end up on one hand with cheap, worthless coal, and on the other hand with diamond, arguably the most expensive of all products in the world. A lot of times two things could look very similar, yet in reality they could be very different. When you compare, for example, two human beings, on one side you have a person like Shimr ibn al-Jawshan al-Riyahi. On the other side you have Al-Abbas ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullahi alayh. These two people did not only look the same, they were even related in blood. And not only that, Shimr ibn al-Jawshan is said to have been one of the most beautiful men in the city of Kufa. Shimr ibn al-Jawshan. It's hard to imagine that a man with his character and personality could have been characterized as beautiful. And of course, a lot of people might disagree with that. They might tell you that there's no way in the world that this man could have looked any nice in any way or shape or form. In fact, we have traditions that state when he was positioned on the chest of Abi Abdullah al-Hussain, peace and blessings be upon him, Imam al-Hussain looked up and he saw his face and he said, "Sadaqa Jaddi Rasulullah." My grandfather, Rasulullah, was truthful when he said that a man looking like a pig would sever your head. But then again, we have a lot of historical accounts that say Shimr ibn al-Jawshan looked good. So, when you look at these two people, they're related, they come from the same tribe, because Shimr ibn al-Jawshan was related to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas from his mother's side, Fatima Al al-Baneen, peace and blessings be upon her. And they looked almost the same, almost identical, because there were two human beings, two mature male men. But if you take a deeper look into these two people and into their personalities, you will find that in fact they were very, very different. This person became one of the worst personalities in ancient as well as modern history. Probably one of the single worst human beings. Even though I remember I used to read about the coffin positioned at the very bottom of hellfire, known as Tabut Saqar. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that name. Tabut Saqar is a coffin in which there are 7 people that used to live prior to the revelation of our Prophet ﷺ, and 7 people from the era that was after the revelation of the Prophet. 7 people since the creation of Adam until the Prophet's revelation, 7 people after that. Now, the people that come from the period prior to the revelation start with Qabil, the one who killed his brother Habil, and then you have the likes of Fir'aun, Namrud, As-Samiri. As-Samiri was the one who built and constructed the cow that would later become the idol, the worshipped idol of the Israelites, the people of Moses. And that's not the point. The point is that there are 7 people from that period of time and 7 people from the period that followed that. Now, I was reading about that and I noticed that the name of Shimr ibn al-Jawshan isn't among that list. The name of, say, Umar ibn Sa'd is not on the list. The name of Yazid is not on the list. And of course we have traditions that Tabut Saqar asks, the people inside the coffin ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to just pierce through the coffin and give them a breathing space, just so they could, sniff some of the air from the rest of hellfire into the coffin. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does that, the air and the gases and whatever they are that come out of that little hole pierced into Tabut Saqar makes the rest of hellfire scream in pain because of what was actually coming out of the coffin. And I was thinking, how come Shimr ibn al-Jawshan isn't there? Yazid isn't there. And this doesn't tell us about Yazid and Shimr and Umar ibn Sa'd as much as it tells us what Tabut Saqar happens to be. So anyway, 2 very similarly looking people could be very different indeed. Just like the example with the coal and diamond. Islam as a perfect religion, that's the first introduction. I'll get back to it later on. As a religion, Islam says, acknowledges the fact that human beings are composed of 2 different yet complementary aspects to their lives. Islam acknowledges the fact that we are made up of these physical bodies, and our bodies actually have a lot of different needs. At the same time, Islam acknowledges and emphasizes the fact that there is another aspect that complements this physical body, and that's the spiritual side. Now, it might be important to note that when we say we have a spiritual side, we're not saying that our soul, for example, is not physical and that it's metaphysical. No. Everything in existence, and this might be a bit controversial, but anything in existence, according to the traditions of Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them, is physical. The soul might be created from a slightly different type of physical thing, but it's still a physical thing. That's why you say, I went and I came and I ran up and I ran down. When you say I, you're referring to your physical as well as spiritual side. You're talking about your soul at the same time. And when you say I went up and down, it means you're physical. Because a non-physical thing cannot go up or down. It's just outside the realm of, outside the boundary of time and space and so forth. So, Islam acknowledges these 2 different aspects and says that these 2 are very complementary towards each other. Take a look at this example for instance. You're sleeping and you wake up in fright. When you wake up, you feel that your heartbeat has increased dramatically. Instead of 80 beats per minute, for example, it's beating at a rate of, 150 or so. You're sweating, you're breathing heavily, and you're really tired, you're exhausted, even though you look at your alarm clock and you notice that you've been sleeping for about 6-7 hours. Why is it that you're so exhausted? Because you were seeing a nightmare. What happened in the nightmare? You saw yourself, for example, running away from a beast or something. The fact is that you were sleeping in your bed. Everybody knows that. No one's going to tell you that you were actually in physical reality running away from a beast. Why is it that you're so tired? Why is it that your heartbeat has increased so dramatically in that formation? The reason is our souls are very well connected with our bodies. And that's why physical fatigue can actually affect in a very profound way our souls, and vice versa. When my soul is tired, you'll find that your body is very tired as well. That's why when you go to Hajj, you'll notice that you run around, you perform the different rituals in Hajj. They're very extremely difficult to perform. And those of you who have been to Hajj know how difficult Hajj happens to be. But when you get back to your residence, you'll feel that, I'm not that tired. If I were to do the same thing in London or New York or Sydney or Moscow or Damascus or Baghdad or whatever, I'd be very tired indeed. But I have done all of this. I've only had about 2 hours of sleep, yet I'm not tired. Why? Because your spirituality is on the rise. Because you're in a place where all you think about is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His house, His messengers. You feel that I'm walking the footsteps of the Prophet and the Imams and Fatima Al Zahraa, peace and blessings be upon her. You think that I am performing a reenactment of the rituals performed originally by Adam alayhi salam and subsequently by Abraham, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the different Imams. I'm in this place where all I think about is God, the hereafter, heaven, hell, the Prophets, messengers. And so you're overwhelmed with a spiritual feeling that leaves your body trying to catch up to your soul, or so to speak. Your soul is running way ahead of your body, and your body is catching up. So there is the physical side. Islam says, look, the physical side. In fact, in the traditions of Ahlul Bayt, it's very interesting. The body is sometimes referred to as your ride, as something on which you would ride. For example, a horse or a donkey or something. No disrespect, obviously. But the soul and the spirit being the main sort of person, the main entity, the main being that rides on the horse. The soul is obviously more important. It is the basis for our very existence and our life. In fact, death is the separation of soul from body. Not the separation of life from soul, because that's another issue. And so you have to take care of this ride of yours. So you have this horse. You can't leave the horse just running around without food, without water. You have to feed it. You have to, give it some time to rest. You have to help it out. You have to give it a shed in which the horse could, rest or sleep or whatever. At the same time, Islam says, be careful. Don't forget that you are the rider. That's the horse. Take care of the horse, but only out of necessity. You have the rider to take care of. That's the most important part. Don't forget all about that. My father mentions a nice story. We used to live in Bahrain long ago, and I spent a good few years there. Now, he says, I don't remember much, but he says, we had a neighbor. And this guy had a really nice car. I'm not sure what it was, probably a Rolls Royce or whatever. And my father says that every day I would notice this man walking out of his house, picking up a chair. First of all, bringing the car out of the garage, and then putting the chair in front of it, giving it a bit of a shine, cleaning the car, washing it, and then just sitting on the chair, observing the car. And he says, my father says, that during my stay of, I think, around 12 years in Bahrain, not once did I see this man riding the car. The car was always there, only as a piece, taking out of a museum or something you would admire and watch, even though it was just a normal car. And the guy would always ride in a bus or take public transportation to work and back. So there is the horse, there's the car, but where am I? Where is me, the rider, the person that the car is supposed to be there in order to serve me as the rider? Now again, and we've covered this quite extensively, I believe, in the 10 nights of Muharram, but nobody is saying that you shouldn't take care of that horse. Nobody's saying that, life is supposed to be boring and you should be overwhelmed with the feeling of guilt, and religion was there only to make you feel bad. And religion was implemented originally to say this is bad, that's good, this is haram, that's halal, do this, don't do that, like a person in a position of authority trying to force someone into doing things or not doing things that person wishes to do. Religion isn't supposed to mean that. Religion was simply put there to give you a sense of direction in your life. Now, when you go out in the market and say, for example, you buy a computer-related product, or basically any product these days actually has this quality. Every single product you purchase actually comes with an instruction manual. Everything you buy, especially those things that, are quite difficult to run, and you'd have to really fiddle with this thing to figure out how it works and the different buttons or whatever it is. And so all the companies, all the respected companies, big corporations that know what they're doing, in order to win market appeal, in order to win more customers, what they do is that they provide very extensive, sometimes very extremely thick instructions manuals that I never read, frankly, but they were actually put there in order for us to know how the product is supposed to function and operate, and for me to know the optimal operation atmosphere, or the best place and the best time and the best type of use that the product could be put into. We came into this life not knowing anything. وَاللَّهُ أَخْرَجَكُم مِّن بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا. He brought you out of your mother's wombs while you did not know anything. Can anybody dispute that? No, I did know. I merely remembered things when I went to school. Nobody is going to dispute the fact that when we came into this world, we were completely, utterly ignorant of everything in existence. We didn't have even the power to go and provide food for ourselves. We couldn't even talk or even probably, think in a rational way. We didn't know anything. We were brought into this world. We didn't know anything about ourselves. We didn't know certainly anything about the world surrounding us. So would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the supreme, wise creator of the world, bring us here without an instructions manual? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought us here. He gave us not only instructions manuals, but He also gave us people who would teach us those instructions manuals. People who would have enough experience in this world to, in fact, enlighten us with the path and the road we're taking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if you take a look, for example, at this instruction manual that we call the Holy Quran, the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will find exactly what the naming implies. Instructions. Now, some might want to call those instructions laws, and that's why we say Islamic law, or Islamic jurisprudence, or all the different types of translations that we have. But in effect, what they are is that they're instructions. And instructions were meant to instruct us, to inform us as to how we should treat this world, how we should treat ourselves in the world. Now, the instructions were put there. For example, if you take a look at the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quotes the mother of Musa alayhi salam, the mother of the Virgin Mary alayhi salam. And incidentally, I'm not sure if you noticed that, but the Virgin Mary, and I mentioned this in a church sermon that I had, I told them that the Virgin Mary is the only woman mentioned by name in the Holy Quran. We have a lot of different women referred to in the Holy Quran, like the wife of Pharaoh, Asiya. And in fact, the names are so familiar that now we think, there must be in the Holy Quran. Where have I read this? Where have I seen it? But in fact, there is no other name but Maryam, salamullahi alayha. This extremely chaste and dignified and noble woman. Peace and blessings be upon her. Sayyidatu Nisa al-Alameen. After Fatima Al Zahraa, peace and blessings be upon her, she is the master of all women of her time. And what happens is, when her mother gives birth to Maryam, she was expecting the newborn to be a boy. And that's why she had vowed that if the newborn was a boy, she would place him in a temple. And, the baby boy would stay there and then become a servant at the temple. Because this was like a form of nadr that they used to do. They're pretty much sure they're not going to have a baby. So what they do is that they make a vow that's so difficult, and so that in return Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give him something. And He did indeed. Not only did He give him a girl, but He gave them, her parents, a girl that later became the master of all women. Now when she was born, what her mother said, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quotes her, is this: وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. Now when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quotes people in the Quran, if there is something that would contradict the quote, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would mention it. Sometimes if He simply mentions the quote without a refutation, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might quote Fir'aun and then refute what he has to say. Of course, this is wrong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clearly telling us this is what He said and it is wrong. At the same time, if He quotes someone without a refutation being made, without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that this is wrong and that the answer to this misconception and to this fallacy is this and this, then what some scholars actually believe that we can take those quotes and we can take them as facts. She says, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. A male is not like a female. Now obviously she had her own reasons to say that. She was trying to say that, look, Ya Allah, I vowed for this baby of mine to live in a temple, but now she's a girl, and a girl cannot be at the temple all the time, for obvious physical reasons. But she ended up doing what she vowed to do, because it's a nadr, and obviously it's haram to break a nadr, not to perform something you vowed to do. But it's very interesting. وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. If you take modern theories, and not only what the traditions and the verses and the prophets and the people with divine knowledge are telling us, if you leave that part out for now and take a look at modern sciences and scientific researches that are being made and the reality that we see before us, a male is not like a female. It's interesting. I was once asked whether the rights of women in Islam are less than the rights of men in Islam. I said the answer to that question is that the rights of women are not like the rights of men, but not necessarily more or less. Because they were created to be different, their rights and their responsibilities were also different. Now obviously there is what we can call, I guess, in a way, a hierarchy. But at the same time, we have two people with very unique and different roles. It's like asking who is better, a doctor or, say, a nurse. Even though a doctor has to, I guess, study a little bit more and be qualified to actually practice medicine. But a nurse does things that a doctor wouldn't normally do or is probably not even able to do. It's like asking whether an architect is better or a civil engineer, or a mechanical engineer or an aerospace, rocket scientist or whatever. We're talking about two different categories of people. There's no way that for us to actually say this is better than that. This is important when in their own field, and this is important in their own field. When we're talking about men and women, this is one of the issues that is always raised. Are men superior to women? Are women inferior to men? Is Islam trying to degrade women? Does Imam Ali, for example, denounce women? The answer to all of that is that women have their own role and men have their own. And it's very important, my sisters in faith, not to mix the two. That's exactly what Islam tries to tell us. For example, to take a look at the concept of hijab. A lot of people, and obviously you being religious followers of Fatima Al Zahraa, peace and blessings be upon her, you might not have that problem, but you've certainly seen it. You've seen how the hijab is sometimes neglected, sometimes abused, sometimes in the name of hijab, Islam is given a bad image, and sometimes by abandoning the practice of hijab, not only Islam and its reputation, but the whole society is damaged. So you've seen those problems. There's no need for me to go over the list of problems that we see around us today, especially among our sisters in faith. But I think we have a major problem in the definition of hijab. What is hijab? Is it a piece of, Calvin Klein cloth that we wrap on our heads? Is it, for example, sunglasses? Because I've seen this actually. Sometimes in especially religious societies, what they do is that they try to cover the face, but they don't want to wear what we call the pushia because it makes them look bad. So they put on these huge, 60s and 70s style sunglasses to cover most of the face. And it not only looks ugly, but I think it attracts people, look at me, I'm an idiot because I'm from back in the 70s. Is that hijab, or what exactly is hijab? Well, take a look again in the Quran. The story, have you seen the movie, The Ten Commandments? Has anyone seen it? The story of Moses? It's an old movie. Very, very bad, I think, in many different respects. But if you watch the movie, not that I'm encouraging anyone to watch it, but there is a scene where Moses, the young, powerful, muscular Moses, escapes Egypt. And he goes out in the desert. He goes to the area where there are women trying to, fetch water from the well. And there are also at the same time men and I think shepherds trying to do the same thing. So these women, these two sisters, they don't have the power to go and fetch the water, bring it out of the well. So what Moses does is that out of goodwill, he goes up and he helps them out. After that, I think or probably before it, I'm not sure, the women that were there, they go behind a tree or something, or behind, I think, bushes or something, and they take a look at this man. He's lying down on the ground, who's Moses. And he's lying down, I think, unconscious or asleep or something. And one of them says, look at his clothes, they're so dirty. The other one says, oh, who cares, he's a man. And subhanAllah, when I saw that, I saw the beauty of Islam. And I noticed how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every single letter in the Holy Quran is fixing one problem. We might not know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to fix, but when you see the opposing side, you find out what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about. For example, the story of Moses in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the story. Obviously, with every story, the Quran isn't, a bedtime story book. It's a book with stories, but all the stories have a moral side to them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to convey a message. So the message in this part of the story, and it's mentioned several times, from different, perspectives in the Quran. He says, فَجَاءَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا تَمْشِي عَلَى اسْتِحْيَاءٍ. One of them came back after he helped them. She came back from her father. تَمْشِي عَلى اسْتِحْيَاءٍ. Now why, I used to think before I saw the movie, why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to go far as to mention this small little detail, that when she came back to give that message to Musa alayhi salam, she was walking in shyness. Why? Why? To refute that horrible picture being drawn of the wife, the future wife of Musa alayhi salam, in the movie written, directed and distributed by Jews. Nabi Musa is destroyed in the movie. They portray him as a man of desires, a man who is filthy, just like, a normal man who doesn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when he sees the tree in flames, he suddenly turns into this holy figure, someone with a long beard, and someone who wouldn't, give in to his desires despite the existence of women around him trying to seduce him and so forth. They turned Moses into this man who used to be normal but then became divine. In other words, telling us that, look, it's okay. You're a man, you're a human being, you're a woman. You can be whatever you want to be. Because your prophet and the messengers of God happen to be that way. Tamshi ala istihya. The hijab, my friends, should include this aspect. To walk in shyness. In other words, we have traditions. And I'd have to reiterate the fact that I'm not talking about halal or haram. I'm talking about Islam with instructions. A religion that's giving us the instructions in this instructions manual. You know, because I don't want to be misquoted as saying, you know, I said this is halal or that's haram. We can't do it even though it's okay according to the ruling of marraige. I'm talking about the instructions that are put there for us to live, you know, happy, fulfilling lives in this world. Look at Fatima Al Zahraa, peace and blessings be upon her. Now, sometimes we call Fatima Al Zahraa a role model. She is a role model. But she's not treated as a role model. What was her role for her to be our model? How should I follow Fatima Al Zahraa? She's the master of all women. If I was a woman, she'd be my master. So what? How is that affecting my life? It's like once I was asked about Imam al-Mahdi salamullahi alayhi and how he's in absentia and no one knows where he is and we wish he was around here and everything. I said, look, we believe in Imam al-Mahdi salamullahi alayhi and we believe that he's alive and that he is in absentia from our eyes. That is, we don't know where he is, we don't know who he is and what he looks like. But just take a look at this scenario. If Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam were to come back, if he was around, how would our lives change? Would I change my life if he was around me? If I knew that he lived right next door, would I live a different life? That's a question that I can't give a response to. Each one of you, each one of us has to actually give her or his own response to that question. Would I be living a different life? Would for example, the channels I flip on TV be different if he were to be sitting next to me on the couch? Would the way I talk to my friends and my parents be different if he were to be sitting there? Would I be living a different life if he was in front of me? If the answer is yes, then why is it that we're living different lives to what we ought to be living? If the answer is no, then good for you. It means you're living perfect lives. It means you are leading religious lives, and that you're much better than me, which is I guess good. And congratulations. And inshallah, when he comes back, you'll be right there, next to him, supporting him, and doing whatever he tells you to do. But the answer is yes, my life would have to change. If Fatima Al Zahraa being my master means that I live a different life than if she wasn't my master, then I guess that means we should follow her role. What was her role? Let me give you a few examples. She's sitting next to her father, the Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajal. A man by the name of Ibn Maktum asks for permission to come into the Prophet's house. And the Prophet comes back and says to his daughter, Ya Fatima, Ibn Maktum wants to come in. Now everyone knew at the time that Ibn Maktum was a blind man. Fatima Al Zahraa immediately gets up and wears whatever covering she had, and she walks out of the room. The Prophet says, but hold on, my beloved daughter, he's blind. Obviously he's not objecting to what she did. He wants to know the reasons and the purpose for which she did what she did. He's only blind, Ya Fatima. She said, I know he's blind, but I'm not. I'm not blind, that's the first thing. And the second thing is that he can smell me. If I'm around, especially blind people, they have sort of like, when they sniff things, when they smell things, they have a pretty strong ability to do that. And that's why they can sometimes detect different people and identify them according to how they smell. She said, first of all, I can see him, and he can smell me. It was at that time, and I'm sure you've all heard the quote, it was at that time when he says, Fidaki abuki ya Fatima. May I be ransomed for you. May I be sacrificed for you, O Fatima. This is the Prophet talking. This is the one that does not speak out of desire. He doesn't say that because he loves his daughter so much. No, because she deserves to be sacrificed by her father being the Prophet ﷺ. Now obviously, sacrificing one thing for another doesn't mean that thing is less significant and less valuable. No, it means just as Imam Hussain ﷺ was sacrificed for Ismail al-Dhabih. Doesn't mean that Ismail was more important. No, Imam Hussain was definitely more important than all the other prophets in existence. Now, إن لم يكن يراني فأنا أراه وهو يشم ريحي. Now take a look at the other example. The same man asked for permission to walk into the Prophet's house while he was in the companionship. He had his two wives with him. Who were they? The most controversial, Aisha and Hafsa. Now, he wants to come in. The Prophet looks down and he sees that, these two wives are not actually doing anything. They're pretty comfortable with the man walking in. No hijab, nothing. And he says, why don't you walk out or put on your hijab or something? They both say to the Prophet, إِنَّهُ أَعْمَى. He's blind, so what? What difference does it make? The Prophet, subhanAllah, the Prophet said, أَوَعَمْيَوَانِ أَنْتُمَا? Are you two blind? You can't see him, can't you? Get out of my room. And they walk out. Look at the two examples. Fatima Al Zahraa on one hand, and these two, now, according to most, to our modern day culture, the culture of the likes of, Jennifer Aniston and the likes of, those celebrities, the people that are, have their pictures on the covers of magazines and on TV, and people are obsessed with them as role models. In this culture, Aisha and Hafsa did nothing wrong, did they? Yet in the Prophet's eyes they did. أَوَعَمْيَوَانِ أَنْتُمَا? Hijab means being shy. And being shy doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Being shy means you are being, you are stopping yourself from being provocative. You are actually protecting yourself from being the target of sick-minded and sick-hearted men. And I'm sure that, the belief prevails that there are lots of sick-minded, sick-hearted men out there. Women, for certain, in particular, they know that for a fact, that there are a lot of men out there that are bad. Shouldn't a woman be protected from abuse of any type? The abuse could be in the form of being looked at. I'm sure that some women enjoy that, enjoy the attention. They want to be seen. But that is a form of abuse. If you look at, I mentioned this to a group of Christians at a church as well. I said, look at the history of women in the Christian church. You see that women, up until the year 650, they were not even considered human beings. The year 650 was marked by a very controversial law passed in France that said women are in fact human beings, but they were created to serve men. Up until 100 years ago, women were not allowed to read the Bible. Compare that with Islam. Now, if we say that that's bad, that women were being used as tools and as commodities and as products and as things for the service of other men, if you think that was bad, well, take a look at our culture today. Women are used in the worst possible way without even them knowing about it. Women are used exactly in the same way. They're used for the pleasure and comfort of men. They're used as a marketing tool. How low is that, with all due respect to those who deserve it? How low is it? Sometimes a woman becomes a product. Sometimes no, she's not a product. She is a marketing tool for all other products. She becomes a marketing tool for toothbrushes and for, combs and, books and cars and everything basically. A woman is not a product anymore. If she used to be a product, that was bad enough, and now she's a marketing tool for other products. Take a look at Islam. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't trying to suppress women. As we said, they have their own roles, they have their own rights and responsibilities, and men have their own rights and responsibilities. There is no suppression of desires. It's only a mere act of channeling those desires and those needs, the spiritual needs that we talked about. Humans have spiritual needs too. They have the need to be loved. And this is why when you look beyond the tabloids and beyond the magazine covers and beyond the TV appearances and beyond the celebrity's skin, you will find some very, very depressed people. You'll find that these people are actually used their skin is used, their faces are used, their bodies are used for the pleasure and comfort of men. But then when they grow out of their faces and bodies and skins, they become just like a bottle of perfume that is, kept in a really nice box. It looks very good. It smells very good. It's treated very well. But then when the perfume runs out, what happens to the bottle? It's thrown in the bin. That's exactly what happens. And that's why a lot of these people, a lot of these celebrities actually commit suicide at the end of their lives. Why? Because they feel that deprivation, that spiritual deprivation in their lives. I mentioned this somewhere else, but it's really interesting. I'll mention it again. Maybe some of you haven't heard it. I once went to a nursing home in Sydney, just to take a look, see what's happening there. And I sat with this 93-year-old woman, and I felt really sorry to the point that I felt I was going to start crying. She's 93 years old, and she has 2 sons that she hasn't seen in the past 2 years. Nowhere in Islam would you ever see a thing like that. When a Muslim man, a God-fearing, God-believing man, would take his mother and throw her in a nursing home, not to see her again. In effect, getting rid of his mother. Take a look at Islam. And this is the main role of women. I know that careers are really important at this age. I know that to a lot of you, marriage is something that you don't think about because you feel you will be restricted and you will have you would never want to write in any application your occupation as a housewife. It just makes everyone feel low. Not a housewife. I'm a doctor. I'm an engineer. I'm a dentist. I'm an architect. I'm an artist. I'm this. I'm that. A housewife? No, this isn't the 20s. This is the new millennium. I'm supposed to excel. I'm supposed to take a leadership position. Well, take a look at the position of Fatima Al Zahraa, peace and blessings be upon her. She was a leader, but not like men. As I said, we shouldn't confuse the 2 areas. These are for men, these are for women, and every one of them has their own significance in the field that they work at. Take a look at Fatima Al Zahraa. One day the Prophet's sitting down with his companions, and he says to them, "What is the best thing for a woman?" No one answers. The commander of the faithful, Imam Ali alayhi salam, gets up and goes to the master of all women. He sits there and he says, "Ya Fatima, could I ask you a question?" It wasn't exactly a cheat, but he wanted to get the answer and go back to the Prophet and tell him, even though he knew the answer. So he says, "What is the best thing for a woman?" She says, "خَيْرٌ لِلنِّسَاءِ أَلَّا تَرَى الرِّجَالِ وَأَلَّا يَرَاهَا الرِّجَالِ." The best thing for a woman is not to see men and not to be seen by men. Imam Ali gets up and goes to the Prophet, says, "I found the answer. The best thing for a woman is not to be seen by men and not to see men." The Prophet says, "That's not yours. Where'd you get it from?" He says, "I got it from your daughter." And he says, "Fidaha abuha," again. Fidaha abuha. And that is a leadership role. Is Fatima Al Zahraa not a leader? You tell me. Is she not a leader? She is the leader of not only us as followers of Ahlul Bayt, she is the leader of Imams as well. Imam, I think Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that every night of Al-Qadr during Shahr Ramadan, we, all the Imams, get together and we go to visit our grandmother Fatima Al Zahraa, because Laylatul Qadr is also called Laylatul Fatima. Is she not a leader? Of course she's a leader, but in a different way. She is a woman. She is a leader in a female figure. وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. Islam is not saying you should be deprived and you should be lowered and you should, be secluded from civilizations. No. Islam is only saying that, because as we said, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, we have honored the children of Adam. We have honored them. We want women and men to live very happy, fulfilling lives. And we provided them with good things. We've held them on the sea and on the land. We've done this, we've done that. But they're very different, unique things. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us, to give us more knowledge about Ahlul Bayt alayhi wassalam. as our leaders and as our role models, to try and channel the relations, the relations that we have, and as a result of the societies in which we inhabit, we have to have these relations between the two genders and the two sexes. But those relations have to be carefully watched. They have to be carefully maintained. Hijab, again, I reiterate, hijab is not only an act of wearing something. Hijab means the way a woman should conduct herself. Just like a man, that conduct, that behavior has to be very well watched and protected and covered. And again, as we saw in the verses, as we demonstrated, tamshi ala istihya, the way she walks, the way she talks, the way she conducts herself. For example, to laugh with other men is wrong, my sisters in faith. To laugh with men, al-mufakaha, as referred to in the Arabic language and in the words of the fuqaha. Al-mufakaha means, to crack jokes and laugh, and to simply treat other men just like I treat my female friend, or sister, or mother, or something. Men have to be treated in a different way. Why? وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. We're not saying they have to be treated in a bad way. We're not saying that we have to be gloomy in our lives. We're just saying that those relations have to be very well watched and maintained. Just like the electric current. We see, the electric current is useful only when confined to the wires, to the copper wires. When that electric current comes out and you see the wires overlapping each other and then melting down, as I've seen a lot of those incidents happen, especially in backward countries that we come from, and I've spent a long time in. You see that these wires, they sometimes overlap, they heat up and they melt, and then you see the electric current jumping from one wire to the other. The positive and the negative, they get mixed up, and you have all sorts of problems. You have fires, you have natural disasters because of that. The relations must continue because there is a necessity for them, but they have to be channeled into the right direction. And marriage, my sisters in faith, is something that is not confined to a special age or a special social group. Marriage is something about which the Prophet ﷺ has talked about. Don't say, this is my career that I want to take care of. I'm an entrepreneur woman. I'm this, I'm that. Marriage is something affable. If a girl gets married at the age of 14, everybody considers that girl to be a baby, someone who doesn't have the ability or even the intellectual capacity to raise a family, which is the nucleus of society today. But the fact of the matter is that is what the Prophet tells us to do. And I haven't seen an example where a 14-year-old girl gets married and she ruins her life. In fact, she ends up having more fulfilling, better lives, as I've seen in the societies that I've grown in and I've seen in my life. And then the Prophet says, فَإِنَّهُنْ إِذَا بَلَغْنَ مَا تَبْلُغُ النِّسَاء فَلَا عِلَاجَ لَهُنَّ إِلَّا التَّبَعُّلِ. There is no cure for them. Not that they're, they have a disease of some sort. But no, they just have these needs, these spiritual as well as physical needs. They have to be filled. And so the Prophet says there is no cure for those needs except taba'ul, which means marriage. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to truly give us the ability to follow our role models, the Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them. هذا والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.